It is great to see this turnout this morning, and I want to thank the Maritime Academy and Northern Michigan College, I talked to Nelson earlier, for making this available to us in the community. This is such a tremendous facility, and it is great to be here with Grand Traverse Bay stretching behind me, and it's always a nice sight to see open water in February. Means we're getting closer to spring. But as you all know, the Great Lakes are the largest body of fresh water in the world. And this great natural resource is up against one of the biggest threats it has ever faced: Asian carp. And that's a fish that has been ranked the most threatening invasive species in the world. And we're here to discuss this threat and local and federal developments in the fight to keep the carp out of our waters. And make no mistake about it, we must preserve this great natural resource, its ecosystem, and the vital $9 billion boating industry, the $7 billion for the commercial fishing industry, and the 800,000 jobs they support. Before we delve into how to do that, I want to thank Attorney General Mike Cox for his tenacious efforts on behalf of the people of Michigan and the Great Lakes region to take this fight to the highest court in the land. And in addition to Attorney General Cox, I'm pleased we have several distinguished speakers who are also going to be talking today. Eric Anderson, who's Director of Northern Lake Michigan of the Michigan Charter Boat Association. Rick Balaban, who's President of the Michigan Steelhead and Salmon Fishermen's Association. Mike Agostino from the Grand Traverse Resort. Brad Van Domelen, who's President of the Traverse City Convention and Visitors Bureau, as well as Kelly Smith, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources and Environment Fisheries Division Chief. And I also want to thank State Senator Jason Allen for being here. Former Representative Howard Walker is here as well as State Representative Wayne Schmidt. We also invited Derek Bailey, who is Tribal Chairman of the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians. He was planning on attending. He's not feeling well, nothing serious, but he is not able to make it. But we're certainly staying in close touch with him on this issue as well. Having these and many other leaders here today shows just how critical this issue is to the Grand Traverse region, the state of Michigan, and the entire Great Lakes region. A quick review of how we got here today. Asian carp were first brought to America back in the 1970s. They were imported into the deep south to cleanse ponds and sewage lagoons. They had escaped into the Mississippi River because of flooding and have been working their way north since. And they've been coming at rates faster than anyone anticipated. Recently, the carp have been found past the preventative barriers near Chicago, just a few miles from Great Lakes access points. And even more troubling, environmental DNA, it's a new technology called eDNA, sampling has found genetic material at several points north of the barrier and also in Lake Michigan. The carp are well suited to the climate of the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes environment is very similar to their native Asian habitats, and they could thrive very well here. These fish grow to a length of more than 4 feet, can weigh up to 100 pounds, and eat nearly half their body weight daily. They jump out of the water at the sound of boat engines, and they can cause significant damage to boats and their passengers. No wonder Time magazine named them the #1 threatening invasive species in the world. That's why President Obama, during his campaign, said that we must have zero tolerance for invasive species, specifically naming Asian carp. And it's why Attorney General Mike Cox led 6 other attorneys general and the province of Ontario in a suit filed with the United States Supreme Court to stop the Asian carp. And it was the Supreme Court's failure to act that led me to introduce the Carp Act, to close all routes and prevent Asian carp today in the House of Representatives, which would close the locks and provide for the ecological and environmental separation of Asian carp from the Great Lakes. And the Carp Act will help immediately halt the migration of Asian carp by immediately closing certain Chicago area locks. It directs the Army Corps of Engineers to close the O'Brien Lock and Dam and the Chicago Controlling Works until a control lock operations strategy is developed. Immediately installing interim barriers, it directs the Corps to install barriers the North Shore Channel and the Grand and Little Calumet Rivers to prevent the migration of carp into Lake Michigan, and between the Des Plaines River and the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal, and also between the Illinois and Michigan Canal and the Chicago Canal to prevent carp from entering the canal during flooding, which has happened. The Des Plaines River flooded last year. It is believed that Asian carp were able to get north of the barrier because of that flood. Enhance the existing barriers, the electronic barriers and the monitoring systems. It includes granting authority to the Army Corps of Engineers to acquire the real estate necessary to construct, operate, and maintain a barrier system. And mitigate impact on the commerce in the city of Chicago. It instructs the Corps to conduct 2 studies. One, to develop a strategy to mitigate the effects of this bill on existing commerce in canals and rivers, which actually has declined and is not at the levels that has been reported in many cases, but also to abate any effects on flooding in the Chicago area or in northern Indiana, and also to prevent and eradicate Asian carp. This bill grants the Army Corps the authority to eliminate and prevent the spread of Asian carp through the use of fish toxicants, commercial fishing, netting, harvesting, and other means necessary, and they need to develop a plan to do that. The bill is gaining support. It has bipartisan support, and a companion bill has been introduced in the Senate by Senator Stabenow, and I know Senator Stabenow's representative Brandon Fewens is here today as well. This legislation has support from both Republicans and Democrats from Michigan, New York, Ohio, and Wisconsin. We must move immediately to stop Asian carp from entering the Great Lakes and this bay. And I'd like to now turn the mic over to Mike. Mike is Michigan's Attorney General, Mike Cox. He's been a leader on this issue, and he stood up for Michigan, for the Great Lakes, and he deserves our thanks and praise for leading this fight. Attorney General Mike Cox.